Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I don't know if you are already in the winter season spirit, but I definitely am. Winter markets are going to open in a couple of days and I'm super excited. It's like one of my most favorite seasons of the year, if not the favorite season of the year, and that means that it's time to make some festive outfits. Today we're going to make a really cool, easy A-line dress for New Year's Eve. At least that's what I'm gonna theme it. You can obviously use this dress, this pattern, for any other festive occasion, for Christmas, for anything else that you are celebrating. I'm gonna do this for New Year's Eve. That's why I am choosing loads of golden fabrics and haberdasheries. I also have like trim and stuff. I don't have trim, I have piping in gold. I was hoping to find some sort of fringe that I can, use and like make this somewhat of a 20s inspired dress, but I didn't find anything, so I had to do something else. But I'm super happy with my plan B, I guess, so that's what we're gonna do today. Before we start this video though, I am on the road to 100,000 subscribers, which I want to reach before the end of 2022. That would mean 1K in 1 year, a little bit over a year, which is insane! So many of you guys are excited to watch my videos every week, and you really seem to like my patterns, which is, I can't even put it in words how much of an honor that is. So thank you so much. If you can just subscribe down below and hit the bell so you'll get notified every time that I post, and maybe we're gonna reach the goal of 100K before 2023 starts. That would be a great end of 2022 for me. That would mean the world to me, so thank you so much. Let's start with the video. For this dress we're going to have a very A-line, I don't know, bodice. It's not really a bodice, but the dress is gonna be A-line. It doesn't have a waist or anything like that. Instead of that, we're going to have details around the neckline. So I have these panels that are going to sit at the neckline. These are going to be 5 centimeters once everything is sewn, and I chose this beautiful golden fabric. Oh, you can't really see it on camera. That is such a shame because it looks amazing in person. I don't know if you can, if that makes it better. I really don't know, but it's like, it's so sparkly. It's so gold. I love it. It's so amazing. It has lurex in it, which is metallic thread. That's why it's so sparkly. And I'm really excited to use this fabric. I have it for my neckline in front and back. And then for the facing, I'm going to use a satin. So I have a pattern piece for the straps, which is 60 centimeters long and 3 centimeters wide. You can use this if you want to. Then you can make like these really tiny straps. I won't use this because I thought using a satin band like this would also look really cool. This one is like 2 millimeters, so that might look really elegantly if you have it like crisscross over the back, which this pattern is made for basically. So that is my solution for the straps. And then also on top of that I have this piping here, which I thought might look really nice once sandwiched in between the two fabrics. So I have this beautiful satin here, and then the lurex. This is actually a rayon lurex mix right here, so really nice. And then having this here at the neckline on top and bottom of the panel. I thought that might look really nice and more festive, as I didn't find the fringe that I wanted to use, so I thought this might be a good alternative. One thing that I have to think of though while sewing is that this is not elastic at all, so I might want to use a little bit more for like the width. This is a tiny bit elastic so that it's not going to be too small basically, and this is not going to like, remove any sort of movement this dress might have. So that is something that I have to work with. Obviously this piping is super optional. You don't need to use this. You can embellish the panel however you like. You can use the same fabric as for the skirt if you want to, so that it's going to be like, for example, a full satin dress. Just put interfacing on all of the panel pieces, outer side and facing, and you should be good to go. So I don't see any problem with that at all. Since I want to like really make it a New Year's Eve dress, I figured this would be a good alternative, and then in total this is probably going to look really, really nice. So what I'm going to start with is the panel, both the facing and the outer fabric, which is put together super easily. I put the seams on different spots so that there are not going to be two seams like on top of each other, which will create a lot of bulk. So I have, for the facing, I have the center front as a seam and then the side seams as seams. And for the fashion fabric, I have where the straps sit a seam, and then the back piece is one piece, and then the front neckline is one piece. So to put this together, we're just going to put right sides together of the specific pattern pieces. So for the fashion fabric, the two back pieces onto the front piece. And then for the facing, we're going to put the side seams right sides together, and then last but not least, the center front right sides together. We're going to iron everything open so that it lays super flat and we're not going to have any issues with bulk. So now that both panels are done, the facing and the outer fabric, I'm going to add the piping to both the upper and the lower seam, so the panel seam and the neck seam on the outer fabric. And I'm going to use my inseam zipper foot to like put these together, because I figure since it also has like room for the zipper teeth, that it's going to work good with this piping right here to have like a very, very close seam line here. I'm going to see how I'm going to do that here in the corners. I'm going to have to snip into the piping at the corners, so I'm going to do that there and then also on the top line of my outer. And for sewing it onto the facing, like the fashion fabric panel onto my facing, I'm not going to use my zipper foot because I tried it out and it doesn't guide both fabrics at the same speed, I guess. So it's like kind of ruffling the lower one and the upper one is getting stretched out, so it's not even. So I'm going to use a one-sided foot, as it's not as important to have the facing like very close on my piping seam, piping edge, I guess. So that should be fine. Okay, so this worked super well. Really happy about that. And we can continue putting the skirt pieces together. I don't really know what to call them, as they're not really skirts. They start like right up here and just go down and basically act as a skirt and everything. But it's also not like a dress. So if you know what that is called, put it in the comments down below, because I'm trying to learn and that is just something that I don't really know yet. So nevertheless, we're going to start putting that together. We have the front and the back piece. Don't worry about this mess of a pattern. I did a mock-up and had to change a few things. I have my two back pieces and my one front piece that lays on fold. And we're just going to put the side seams together, right sides together. And here you can see my beautiful satin, which I'm really happy with. This is a thicker satin, which like perfect. It's so perfect. Let's take our back piece and put right sides together and close the side seam. To make everything neat and tidy, I'm going to overlock afterwards. I'm going to iron the seam allowance into the back pieces. And now it's time to put the panel onto the lower dress part. So as I have the piping on here now, my plan is for the lower seam, the panel seam, to sew as closely as I can to this piping. I will use my one-sided foot and just rely on my seam allowance being exactly 1 centimeter so that I can, you know, make this work. I have a few notches in my piece so that I can match up the side seams, for example. It's probably not the worst idea to do that and pin it, because for my tryout piece, this here lays on the bias, the back panel seam, so it tends to stretch out. And if you have your notch in your piece, if you find it, you know exactly where to put it, and then you know how much length you have to put into that seam. As you can see, it's a tiny bit stretched out, which is fine. We can make that work when sewing it together, as we're gonna have the satin on the bottom and it's going to, you know, move by machine, while the upper side that has the piping, so there is no give at all, is at the zipper foot. Right here in the corners, here, I have to cut into it, and I'm going to just cut right towards the piping there. Otherwise, I won't be able to sew these pieces together because I have a tip right here, and this needs to be put together like so. So this is like a very drastic tip, I guess, but that's how it's supposed to be. I'm going to find my stitching line here at the tip, and I'm going to mark it for you so you can see it. It's basically 1 centimeter in from both the seams, and where they meet is exactly where we need to put this point, right where I cut into. I'm going to use a needle to mark the point, and that is going to get pinned through there as well. That is only one needle that I'm going to use to guide me. Then I'm going to open up the panel as much as I need in order for the seam allowances here to match up, as they're both 1 centimeter. And then I can pin this in place. Same goes to this side over here. Just like that. And then I can use this pin here just for it to temporarily like fix these points together in order to be able to sew better. I will take all of these out while sewing. And then this here, as this is a curve, you might need to cut into it to let it open up a tiny bit for it to lay better. Probably not needed as it's on the bias. And then we're going to continue doing the same method here in the center front. This time it's the other way around, so that we have to cut into the skirt piece. But I'm also going to mark my stitching line so that I know exactly where my center front is. Seems to be further to the left than I anticipated, but that's where it is. And that point here needs to be matched up exactly with our center front here in the panel, like right there. And now I can also go ahead and turn it so that I have the seam allowances match up. We need to cut into the skirt piece in the center front right towards the needle so that we can turn, this time, the black fabric so that the seams, or like the seam allowances, match up here as well. Like that, and then I will be using the needle here in the middle to just fix this point in place here so that it's not going to move. And then we repeat the same for the other side and can sew this together with a one-sided foot very carefully. Okay, that is what it looks like. Looks really, really nice. I'm super happy with it. I think it would be the best call to iron all of the seam allowances into the panel, because then it gets covered up by the facing. And on top of that, since the lower side of the panel seam with the piping is the one that is not super close to the piping, it's going to hide that too. So we're going to have like 2 pros for that. As you can see now, it looks really, really nice and neat. Whereas if we were to iron this down into the dress, you see the difference. This is better. And now we can put our straps in. I waited for these straps for now, until now basically, because I want this piping to cover the straps. So once this is turned right sides out, this is going to cover the straps like this. And I wanted the gold to just continue over the straps. I didn't want like this interruption here, didn't like it. So that's why I did this. And we can put our straps in here. I only added like 1 centimeter seam allowance, so I can't put it all the way to the edge of the seam, but I have to measure from the stitching line here 1 centimeter up. And that's where I am going to like have my strap stop. If you have a strap coming from like somewhat of a cardboard, it has these edges in it. Just quickly iron that out. It's easiest now to do it, since once on the dress, it's not gonna lay flat anymore. Now, this is going to go all the way over here to where we have our strap notch right there. Now, without twisting this, I'm going to pin this in place here at the notch on the, basically on the other side, since it's going to crisscross. And I'm gonna do the same for this. And now once this is turned over, it's going to have this crisscross on the back. It's gonna look really, really nicely. Now we can put this in place already. Quickly before we do that, I'm going to overlock the lower edge of the facing panel because we're not going to have as easy access anymore. We're going to probably cover it and like put it on the inside, but I'm not sure yet. So just be safe than sorry and overlock that edge too. Okay, now we can put right sides together of the facing and the panel. And first thing that I'm going to do is just match up the points where we have the straps. So you see here that the facing does not match up with the outer fabric. That's how it's supposed to be, don't worry. So I'm just going to line up everything. And then using my one-sided foot again, just as I did for the lower seam here, the panel seam, I'm going to sew both pieces together. And then we can close the back, turn everything right sides out, and the dress is done. And I'm super excited to see how it's going to look. So before we turn everything right sides out, we're going to cut away the seam allowance, especially right here in the edge here. And as you can see where the straps are, I did like a tiny, I did a couple of stitches over top so that they are, you know, secure in place and they're not going to rip out because we don't want that. We're going to cut away the seam allowance here also pretty drastically in order for it to be, you know, laying smooth once it's turned right sides out. And here in the center front, we're going to cut into as well, so this is like open and it can lay nicer. Let's cut into the seam here to, you know, make it easier for the fabric to lay flat, as this is a curve. Same goes to this side. That should be it. And now we can turn everything right sides out using the straps to pop out the edges here, and as you can see, it looks super, super neat. Same goes to this side. And I think I'm also going to add a top stitch into the seam here just to secure the strap even more into place. Now we can already iron this. Before we sew this facing like onto here, we can either do it this way or just right on top. We're going to close the center back, but it's better to iron now when, you know, it's still laying flat on the table, the dress, rather than it to be a tube. And it's pretty nice since we have the piping. The facing won't be visible whatsoever, so it doesn't matter how I sewed the seam at all because you will not see it since the piping is there in place. Nevertheless, I'm still going to iron the, or at least try to iron the ditch of the seam somewhat to the facing side. So as the last step, or like the second to last step, we can sew this together. Now I'm going to open up the facing again so that we can sew this seam in one go. That way it just looks nicer because we have this seam here hidden. On top of that, we have to be very careful so that the piping somewhat lays on top of each other, because it is piping, it has a shape. This can be a bit tricky. They're probably gonna end up laying next to each other, which is also fine. But just make sure to like match them up. Same goes to down here. And then we're just going to match up the remaining center back all the way down to the hem. So this, and then also overlock it, and we can iron it to either side. Now we're going to iron the seam here in the center back where the panel is. I'm going to iron the seam open, so I'm going to cut right underneath the lower piping into the seam allowance so that I can iron this seam here open, and then the rest gets overlocked together. So that when I put this wrong sides together, this lays as flat as possible. And also, I tried to match up the piping. I don't know if it worked. Oh yeah. Here, where it's very visible, it worked very well. And here, it's not that visible, but one like kind of hides behind the other, but it also seems fine, so I'm cool with that. Let's quickly also overlock the remaining center back seam here. Okay, now we can leave it as is. I'm not going to do that because I really don't want to be bothered by the facing, like going this way. So I am going to add a top stitch. You can do this by hand if you just want to fix the facing in place at a few spots. You can do that too, just like here, here, and maybe somewhere in the back. Or you can just do a quick top stitch that you can either do very visibly as a decoration, or you can just do it kind of hidden. I'm going to take my zipper foot now and like sew right in between here, basically where I already sewed the panel on, in the panel seam, basically like above the piping, so that it is completely hidden, and that way I can fix my facing in place all around. I have to be careful though, because that was the thing that I was talking about in the very beginning. My zipper foot is not like guiding the fabric evenly through the machine. The lower fabric gets, you know, gathered, whereas the upper fabric gets kind of stretched. So I'm going to have to like move my upper fabric, the Lurex one, with a tool through the machine in order to have an even finish in the end. But that's what I'm going to do, or like at least try to do. So now that everything on top is now done, as you can see right here, the facing is fixed in place. Pretty much evenly all around. We can go ahead and hem the dress. I already went ahead and overlocked the hem. I don't think that is necessary though, that's why I didn't tell you, as I'm going to do a folded hem like this, so like 5 millimeters folded inwards twice, and then I'm going to top stitch it to have like, you know, the neatest hem that I can possibly make. And let's iron this hem. So I found it's the easiest way to iron a curvy hem if you just stretch out the hem even curvier than it is. That way you can flatten out any of this and any of these wrinkles here, and it worked out pretty well for me every time. And with that, the dress is completely done. Super excited about this one. And that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. This was a super quick sew. I am very excited. It took 3 hours for me, something like that. And I like did this piping thing that you obviously don't have to do. So this dress without all of the special things is a very quick sew. Super easy, beginner friendly if you ask me. I mean, it has the corners, but if you work neatly, this is doable for every sewing level in my opinion. So if you're interested in the pattern, link to it is down below. There is my Etsy shop. You can find loads of pattern on it. You might find something else if you're not ready for this one yet. I have a wide variety of different levels from beginner friendly to super expert, so go ahead and check that out. And while you're at it, down below hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you'll get notified every time that I post. Help me reach 100k before the end of 2022. That would be so amazing. That's my goal for this year. Thank you so much for all of your help and your support here on my YouTube, over on my Instagram, and of course on my Etsy shop. That is amazing. Thank you so much. Check out the links down below to all my social media, Instagram as well as Pinterest and so on and so forth. I'm uploading loads of tips and tricks regarding my projects every week, so you'll find a few for this dress there as well. And thank you so much for watching, and I'm gonna see you next Sunday. Bye guys!